In the time that I've edited Vogue, so often fashion is held up as some kind of malevolent cultural force, promoting all manner of society's ills, whether that be eating disorders, or conspicuous consumption, or slave labor, or paedophilia. But at the same time, it's often used by the very people who are making that criticism to sell copies of their own newspapers or get interest in television programs. Now, today's panel is made up of 4 individuals who, in their own way, have each used fashion as a force for the good. They're passionately engaged in working outside the straight fashion arena, and all of them are certainly amongst the most interesting and inspiring in their thoughts and their methods. Olivia Firth, at the end, has become a highly effective voice in this world. She's creative director of EcoAge, which started as a shop in Chiswick, but has now grown into a highly valued corporate consultancy service and innovator in the sustainable fashion industry. Not content to simply be married to the heavenly Conforth, she has used her position, disguising herself as red carpet arm candy, to cannily infiltrate, Trojan horse style, that high-profile arena, and draw attention in a vivid way to her mission to encourage a more environmentally sustainable approach to fashion. Catherine Hamnet, next to Olivia, is a pioneer in the field of using fashion as the medium to convey the message, whether that be anti-nuclear or yesterday drawing attention to the importance of the bee. Few of us around at the time could forget her brilliant use of a 1984 Downing Street reception to stage her T-shirt protest, 58% don't want Pershing. And her activism has remained as passionate now as it was then. She continues to engage in a range of issues, but I'm pleased to say that there are rumbles, faint, but I hope prophetic, that she might be restarting her line. Tom Craig, sorry. Tom Ford, that well-known environmental advocate. Tom Craig is a photographer who has combined fashion photography for Vogue and works with brands like Louis Vuitton with a skill and passion for reportage photography. His shoots for Vogue always bring a strong sense of place to the image, in a kind of flip side to his work where he brings images from war zones and disaster areas to our attention. For example, the Gaza Strip, Congo, and only a week or so ago, Syria. And I'm very honoured that we've been able to persuade Dame Vivian Westwood to be part of the panel. Not only is she one of these countries' most exceptional designers since the early 70s, but she's also a passionate advocate of humanitarian and environmental issues. Vivian says she's not interested in discussing fashion anymore, but we can't forget that she was part of the society-changing punk pioneers and remains a person who has consistently used fashion to provoke and engage. I'm now going to hand over to Vogue Features Director Jo Ellison, who will be introducing everybody's presentations and then taking questions from the audience.
Morning. Hi. I don't want to stop anybody. I'm going to give everybody about 5 minutes because they've all got completely different agendas and slightly different takes on the subject today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Olivia, who's going to answer the question, can fashion change the world?
Yes. Well, welcome. I'm so happy we're here today because not only fashion can change the world, but it absolutely must, considering what happened in Bangladesh 2 days ago. I think it's one disaster too many for us to ignore. And this is why I started the Green Carpet Challenge, and I'll tell you all about it. And forgive me, I usually never read, but I'm terrified by technology. It's the first time I use a slide thing, so I have to. I've never been a fashionista in my life, but I sense an opportunity to be an active citizen through my wardrobe. So let me explain how that happened. There you go. So it was Ursula de Castro who told me a few years ago that fashion encompasses all industry from agriculture to communication. So we are full spectrum. Therefore, we have a huge impact, and we have to make sure that impact on people, place, and planet is minimized. So 80 billion garments are produced new each year. So imagine all the resources that this requires. With the exception of the oil and mining sector, it's hard to think of another industry, at least one that we all have a connection with every single day, which has quite such an impact. To make our clothes, we need water. Between 11,000 and 20,000 liters of water are needed to produce enough textile for one pair of jeans. Oil, energy for textile production, dye for color, and we are dependent at a time when these resources have been degraded at a faster ever rate than before. Safia Minni reminded me that we consume more than 2.5 planets worth of natural resources and dispose of 1.5 million tons of unwanted clothing and textile each year. So, as we know all very, very well, underneath all of that, we have an army of millions of humans tilling the soil, picking the cotton, processing it, ginning, weaving, dyeing, working looms, sewing embellishment, sequins and buttons, and working sewing machines in huge factories. So imagine the footprint. We know it was environmental, and we now know very, very well it's also social. Over the last few years, I've had the pleasure of meeting some of these workers. Many of these are women. I've been in Bangladesh, I visit the factories, and whenever I meet these women who work day and night on our wardrobes, they all ask me the same thing, that I tell their story. I'm always reminded of Ali Hewson, who set up the brand Eden, and her motto, which is, we carry the story of the people who make our clothes around with us. And to me, this is central. So I want us to acknowledge and honor the women who make our clothes. And with this quote in my ear, I set up the Green Carpet Challenge a few years ago. We were a small group of us working in the UK who were obsessed by fashion and sustainable footprint, yet realized its potential to do good and spread the wealth of fashion more equitably. Our learning curve has been a steep one, from working individually with designers who describe themselves as ethical, to now persuading some of the biggest design houses on the planet to open the door to us. We work with Valentino, with Armani, with Lanvin, Chanel, Gucci, you name it, we work pretty much with everyone. And this adventure has taken us deep into the supply chain. We have persuaded designers to use materials with a lesser impact, particularly those that recycle waste consumer goods, such as old plastic bottles, and re-engineered these fibers into a beautiful high-end material. And I must say, I got a bit of a kick out of the, knowing that I was walking the red carpet dressed in what beautiful Valentino gown, but in fact, I was carrying someone's garbage. So that was not enough for the Green Carpet Challenge, because we are quite an ambitious group. And we realized that we have privileged insight into the supply chain of some of the world's most celebrated fashion brands. So what do? We also had established great relationship with many designers. And after working with them on the red carpet and building a greater understanding of what drove them, we were able to pinpoint parts of the supply chain that could be actually shifted, not just in order to be less bad, but in order to bring positive changes. So I told you we were ambitious. And it is quite obvious we produced a Gucci bag. Now, not everyone will buy a Gucci bag, which leads to the charge that perhaps such efforts are tokenistic and cannot change very much at all, never mind the world. But let's see what really goes on in here. The leather supply chain created for this project resulted in 5 huge ranches being certified. the San Marcelo group in Brazil. It proved that contrary to popular opinion, it was not impossible to certify leather from cow right the way through. It was totally possible and achievable. And furthermore, once that we've done this, Gucci or any other fashion houses now can't ignore this brand new supply chain and have to be used, but maybe also by mainstream fashion who can access that same leather for a lesser price point. So this taught me that sometimes the fashion industry orthodoxy should and can be turned on its head. Of course, this is a lesson that many other fashion pioneers have taught me. Here are some other businesses that are changing the world via fashion. People Tree, Pachacuti, Leila Hafsi, unfortunately the slide cut her name, but there she goes. So an increasing number of fashion fans have grasped that the wardrobe has transformative powers. I'm not saying this always transferred to buying habits, which is an entire different debate, unfortunately, but one we should have. This shouldn't be mysterious to us. I believe deep down we all want to do the right thing, and conversely, we brittle at clothing ourselves in clothes of uncertain provenance that may or may not be linked to gross exploitation of people and planet. But how do we set these transformative powers free? I am choosing to work in the supply chain and on the public face of sustainable style. This rather beautiful image was taken by legendary Lillian Bassman in 1956. I am sure Lillian did not mean it in the context of sustainable style. She could not have predicted what fashion consumers have become. Voracious consumers caught up in an unsustainable churn of clothes, micro-trends, and disposability. But her title gives us all a central piece of advice. Buy carefully and get more fashion mileage out of each piece. Buy with heart and commitment, and wear with heart and commitment. Definitely fashion can change the world, one wardrobe at a time.
I'm now going to introduce Catherine. Catherine arrived this morning and decided to rip up the speech she was going to make and start again. Specifically going to look at the factory collapse over the last couple of weeks. So I'd just like to introduce her.
Yes, I did. I saw the news. I actually did Newsnight the other night, saw the pictures of the factory collapse, and then did Channel 4 News last night, and found out that there's still 400 people missing, 300 dead, and the police beating up panic-stricken, grieving relatives. I mean, we're given 5 minutes, and my first thought is, well, actually, we should just have 5 minutes silence for the people who died. It's a very sad day, but I'm not going to do that because I think I want to use this constructively to try and come up with some ideas how we can make sure that this kind of thing never happens again. I think this is just one too far. It's unbearable. And when you see the police beating up the relatives, I mean, we've created this hell. So we've got no slide because I thought it's frivolous, and this is a very dark day for the clothing industry. And first thing I think we've got to say is who is responsible for this? And you can say it's consumers, but it's actually brand owners, people who run clothing companies, the way their buyers behave. I've seen it happen. It makes you wince. They'll spend 3 hours in a factory beating the prices down till the pips squeak. And more than that, they actually even take pleasure in it, and it's almost regarded as a sport. Brands who think 800% markup on cost is a desirable profit margin. And the bad buying on the part of the retailers. Oh, we don't know what's going to happen in fashion, so I think we have like 200 pieces now, and then we're going to hit the factory because this style's selling, so we want another 5,000, we want it in 3 days, or 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, but something which is virtually impossible. And you get, I mean, I can imagine what happened at that factory. There's a crack, but he thinks, I've got this order to get out. We don't have any money in the bank because we hardly make any profit because the buyers have beaten us down so hard that if we don't get this order out, they'll cancel it. And I've seen the punitive things buyers do to factories that are, a day late for whatever reason. So if we don't get the workers in there and make these orders, we're going to go bankrupt and they're all going to be out of jobs and we've got to take the risk. Well, we've got to stop this. I can talk about, I was going to talk about, how we build a nice sustainable supply chain and probably put in a plug for my new secret thing I'm going to do. But I think Straps got thrown out the window as well. And I was going to pick up a jokey picture of Kesh wearing a No More Fashion Victims t-shirt, but I just think it's too sad. Who are the fashion victims, I think we should look at? Because this factory, I think this has got to be a marker. I think this has got to be a turning point on the industry. We can't let this kind of thing go on happening. There's about, one every 2 months where there's not fire exits, where people are burned to death or not allowed to leave. You can say that, it's a quest for cheap clothes, but, the price may be low, but when the real price is paid in human lives, they can hardly be more expensive. So but there's other fashion victims as well, and I've been actually asked to deal with these too, so I'm going to whistle through it because I don't want to exceed my 5 minutes. The fashion victims, it's pretty well everybody and everything. Working our way through the supply chain from the bottom up, start with the conventional cotton agriculture nightmare. 10% of world agriculture, 25% of world pesticides, 10,000 deaths a year, 1 million hospitalizations. We've made some progress. 2% of world cotton is now organic. I've been campaigning for this for 25 years, but not doing too well because I actually worked it out. So that would be 8% every 100 years, 100% in 1,250 years. The pace of change is too slow. Sorry, folks. Another 1,250 years of chemical pesticides? I don't think so. Cotton farmers and their families. Pesticides also kill microorganisms in the soil, upon which the health of the soil depends, turning fertile land into desert, and at the same time killing pollinators such as bees, highly tropical, and other beneficial insects. Fresh water is contaminated with pesticides, herbicides, you name it, and there's no way of getting it out unless you pass it over activated carbon. In countries where they're earning like $1 a week, they're going to do that. No, they're going to drink it. Marine systems, water, the freshwater supply, the runoff from pesticides is killing the charophytes, I think they're called, which are responsible for the initial points of decay. So it's the entire eco-cycle. The Aral Sea, which you all know about, shrunk to 10% of its former size due to cotton irrigation. The atmosphere, fertilizers, greenhouse gas emissions, and huge amount of air transport, all these trade fairs that we have, everybody goes there. Can't we just do it online? The oceans, obviously, are getting it. Everything ends up in the ocean. Acidification of the sea, human rights. It goes on and on. So how are we going to stop this? And the only way that I can think that we could do this is actually toughening up the laws on the goods that we're allowed to import it into our own countries, because this is the only areas that we've got control over. So you could say initially the UK, but also the EU, because obviously Brussels got more power than Westminster, so it should be EU. We should demand credible, verifiable certifications on, looks like building inspections, labour laws. We should bump up REACH, which is the OSPAR list of chemicals that Greenpeace suggests were banned, but there's another 13 pages of chemicals that they wanted banned. REACH doesn't nearly cover all of them. We need those chemical banned as well. And if we demand high certification like SA 8000, labour standards. But in doing this, we will help other countries to clean up their act, but we also help our own, because it means that if you've got to pay workers proper wages, that they're paid for time off, they're paid for their overtime, which often isn't the case, the price of clothing actually goes up, which means that our clothing industries, which have been slaughtered by the fact that China was allowed into the WTO without making any concession on its currency or addressing its human rights, we missed an incredible opportunity there. It's actually killed the clothing industries of Europe. The clothing industry is enormous. It employs actually 1 in 6 people globally in jobs, and we need those jobs back. So if we actually said we're only going to have goods that are certified, these standards allowed into our countries, it actually makes our own manufacturing more competitive and could even revitalize our own industries. I mean, at the moment, there's a huge, I think, surge for made in England, made in Britain, because in these emerging economies of Southeast Asia, like China, etc., they don't want made in Japan, they don't want made in China, they want made in the UK and made in the EU. So, it would make sense if we did this, because I love ideas as a designer. I think I love something that ticks all the boxes all the way down. And I think that this does. And I, for one, am going to start campaigning. I'm going to start talking to ministers, anybody I can lay my hands on, use all the access I've got to see if we can come up with some suggestions for new laws which will deliver just this. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Tom's going to take us from a slightly different perspective. He's going to look at how photography, and I suppose his work as a fashion photographer, and also for other sort of reportage jobs that he's done for the Sunday Times and Médecins Sans Frontières, and look at how photographs have been used as a window into a world that society may not necessarily have seen elsewhere. Over to Tom.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to endorse and agree with everything that Catherine said wholeheartedly. I'm not going to talk about that area is not my area of speciality. I want to talk about my own experience as a photographer that's been working in humanitarian issues for nearly 20 years, but also have had this amazing opportunity to work specifically as a fashion photographer of sorts, particularly with British Vogue. And I want to try to talk about what I understand as being a really positive, powerful energy that comes out of the fashion industry. It's obvious that when we look at the front pages of the newspapers and we hear about these issues and the tragedies this week, it's very easy to feel oneself being surrounded by the doom and the gloom. And Alexandra began the introduction talking about her experience where there's been a certain amount of cynicism over the years. People love to categorize fashion. People love to pile it into this isolated bubble. And they love to have a poke at it. They like to point out what's wrong with it. And I don't want to dwell on any of that. I want to talk about someone that's navigated the waters between being involved in news and humanitarian issues and also being involved specifically in fashion. I want to show you some pictures that I believe deal with the boundary between those two things. And I want to talk about the fact that fashion has given lots of people a voice, and it's given a platform, a forum. It's given a magazine in which we can discuss issues that do need to be discussed. That's absolutely clear today. And I don't see the need to force fashion or any industry into any particular pigeonhole. I don't see the need to say, this is a business, this is a slice of life, this is part of the industry over here, and that's all it is. You know, fashion is a phenomenon. It's a creature, it's like this beast. I mean, to me, it's like the twister at the start of The Wizard of Oz. You know, it moves from one season to another. It goes through Sao Paulo, it goes through New York, it comes to London. It picks people up. It picks up Bollywood, it picks up artists, it picks up photographers, it picks up writers, it picks up intellectuals, and it gives them an energy. This twister is energized by the people that are in it, and that's what fashion is. It's composed of the elemental parts, the people that are involved in it. And if you ever wanted to see an example of whether fashion can change the world, then I'm sitting right in the middle of it here. If you want to start a revolution, if you want to have a voice, if you want to say something and ask yourself the question, can fashion change the world? Well, look at this panel. This panel has been brought together essentially by fashion. We're sitting at the Vogue Festival, and this is a remarkable group of people that are brought together by this magnetism, by this force that I'm talking about. And I don't want to digress too much. I want to get on to the issue of the photography, which is what I know about.
You need to do, because we haven't got long.
We all think of fashion photographers as out-and-out fashion photographers. Well, it's wrong. Photographers are artists. They express themselves. They're photographers in their own right. These were pictures that were taken by Norman Parkinson and Cecil Beaton of the land girls and the home front during the Second World War. Vogue magazine was given a special concession to continue its print runs during the Second World War, and it was a platform, and it was a forum in which people could talk about what was going on at home, the defense, the life, the struggle, and that came through a fashion channel. The list of photographers that have been involved, that we all consider as fashion photographers. I mean, Cecil Beaton, I've noted, Norman Parkinson. Richard Avedon died photographing American GIs that were injured in the war. Lee Miller's pictures of Buchenwald were published in American Vogue. There's a list that goes on and on of photographers. Irving Penn shot indigenous tribes all around the world. You know, please, let's not put everything into a particular camp. They don't have to be fashion photographers. They don't have to be fashion individuals. They're people with a voice and a sense of creativity. And if you're expressing that voice, then you can be heard, and you can make a point about fashion, and you can attract attention, and you can talk about fashion. But you can also talk about other things. So if I'm asked the question, can fashion change the world, then I think it has the power, but we also have to be broad-minded about it, and that's really what today is about. This is a picture that I took 20 years ago. It's probably the first fashion photograph I ever took. And I was doing a story about the projects in South Africa. At the time, it was the inaugural South African Fashion Week. And I met one of the designers there who wanted me to photograph the collection. And I said, great, let's go to Soweto. And we photographed this picture in the middle of Soweto against the better judgment of all the people that were sort of looking after me. But I wanted to do it because I wanted to stand on this boundary between life and culture and observation and fashion. I wanted to try and bring the two things together. And that was my chance to try and take a fashion picture that had a comment about something else as well. These two images, completely not fashion pictures, but they are pictures about style, like two groups of the most remarkable women I've ever met. On the right, there's a picture taken in Sierra Leone where I was doing a story about child soldiers, and on the left, a group of nurses in Armenia, but it's quintessentially a picture about style. And it's okay. You know, images can be about style. We don't have to put them into this camp of necessarily just being fashion. Now, I wanted to show this one because this is the absolute crossover. On the left is a documentary image that I took in Albania a few years ago, and on the right is one of the images I've taken for British Vogue. And it was taken in Havana, Angela Limval standing in the scene. And I just wanted to make the point that when I go to a place and I want to encompass a sense of observation or a sense of culture, I want to put that in the image as well. And I think that that's okay. The final slide is another image on the right I took of Stella Tennant, which is a particularly sad image for me because it was photographed during sunrise overlooking Damascus in Syria, a place that's now descended into all manner of madness, even worse this week, I may add. And the picture on the left is an image of a Syrian refugee I took a couple of weeks ago. Same photographer, same 3 or 4 years, a photograph of the back of someone's head. One's in a fashion magazine, and one was taken for UNHCR. One speaks about one element of life, and one speaks about another, and yet we can still make a point. We can still bring things to the fore. We can still make a comment using fashion. And so can fashion change the world? Has fashion changed the world? Do we need to answer that question today? I mean, I think we can have a really good go, and that's how I feel. And there's the power and the individuals and the forcefulness and the creativity to give it a good go, and that's what I think we need to do.
Thank you. just like to show this slide here is Vivian only yesterday lobbying at number 10 for the bees on the March of the Beekeepers. Catherine was there also. I think
She should be next.
no better indication of a woman living, acting every day in sort of like in on behalf of environmental causes. I want to know how you've used fashion to promote your kind of personal causes and climate change awareness, Vivian, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to answer that part of it because we don't have much time. And therefore, I might not ever get round to the answer, what can fashion change the world? Because I think it's really important to present the background of the world in which we live. And if I don't have time to answer it, what I probably would really need to say is that it's not necessarily, well, fashion, yes, but the world, people need to change the world. It's people here that have the chance to change the world by whatever method. That is what we depend on. And if people do not engage more with the world that they live in, then it won't happen. And we're talking about informing ourselves. That's what I mean by engage with the world. But it's also about culture. We've been just consuming and not putting in at all. Non-stop distraction, consumerism, not thinking, not joining up the dots. Most people haven't a clue of what happens in this world and what goes on. And I just want to point out that on the seats is a little ticket, which is a handout for climate revolution. Now then, you can find out what climate revolution is because there are some blog things on the back. And the one that I particularly would like you to know is the one that says activeresistance.co.uk. And that is my website where I do a diary. Actually, the name should really be Vivian Get a Life, but somebody else has got the title Get a Life, so it has to have Vivian in front of it. But anyway, please look at, it would do me the utmost favour if you would read the diary, and I'll tell you why, because if you do, I think it will give you a view of the world that you won't get very easily. And the main point about the climate revolution is there's a main message that we want to try and get over. And the reason for the main message is, one, because it's true and it's totally vitally important to understand this. And I've forgotten the other reason, I'll remember it in a minute. But anyway, it is that climate change is caused by the rotten financial system, and that's what caused it. But it's not only, and therefore, the symptom of that is the crisis. You'll never get out of it. The only way out of the hole is what's good for the planet is good for the economy. What's good for the planet is good for you, of course. And of course, the propaganda is completely opposite to that. That if you spend money to do anything about climate change, then we're going to have less money and we're all going to be suffering. Quite the opposite. Anyway, I would love to tell you about what's going on in Lambeth, throwing people out of their houses and selling the houses, and the housing list just gets longer and longer. I mean, that is climate revolution. Would not be that. If we're putting the planet first, we wouldn't be doing that. We wouldn't, because we'd be thinking about the future and all the upset from these communities that are being destroyed. You wouldn't do that. So it's on every level, but it's very much to do with culture. And I'm going to just right now talk about the politics and the politics mean that governments don't work directly for people. They work apparently indirectly for people by supporting corporations and business, and the good of that is supposed to trickle down. But we know now, it's very clear to see that that the financial system is designed to create poverty and to siphon off profits for less and less people. And of course, as the earth gets smaller and hotter, there will be even less people, and there won't be many people at all left. We know that. We're being told it all the time. Why aren't we being told this is how we can stop it? That's what isn't happening. But anyway, I'm going to talk about politics.
We have only a moment or two.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to still do it because it's ridiculous to have so short a time. And anyway, so it won't take long, but I shall finish it. Okay. And so I have to just tell you about Bretton Woods. And by the way, I'm going to quote from this book by John Pilger. And this was a British bestseller, a UK bestseller. So a lot of people know what's in this book. I've brought it because if I read it, it's not just me telling you. You'll know that all these people know about these things. But it's by no means generally known. Anyway, so at Bretton Woods in 1944, when the war in Europe was finished, there was a conference in America. And America vetoed the ideas of the European countries. The Europeans wanted a different financial system with checks and balances and fines for too much profit. A genius, Maynard Keynes, had this plan. America wouldn't accept it. Everybody had to agree because they were all in debt to America and they needed war loan. They'd already had war loans, they needed more money, whatever. And America was allowed to dictate all the terms it wanted, where it would have access to all the raw materials and the free labour in the world, and nobody would stop it. And therefore, it laid the foundations of what we've got now, which is the global economic system, the globalisation. Anyway, and I'm just going to now read a page and then just finish with another thing. Because I am, of course, anti-American regarding their foreign policy and their propaganda that keeps all their population, so whatever. But it's the same in England. I'm not saying that, you know, we're any different. In fact, we started it off. Here we are. It's called The Great Game, this chapter. Quote by Lord Curzon. To me, in 1898, this is, to me, I confess that countries are pieces on a chessboard upon which is being played out a great game for the domination of the world. Now then, we know that the British under the colonial system were disgusting, revolting, obscene, the way they treated people and the picture they had of themselves, them and us. That's what we've always got to remember. And I'm going to say that the them and us is completely what George Orwell called double-think. You know, we're just talking, well, we weren't, but the things that happened with the pressure cookers and those little kids and everything, the cluster bombs that are still around, still sending out the shrapnel that causes so much death in the world, thousands of people, but of course, those are other people. They're not the American child or the British child. It's us and them. Completely double-think, different standards. Anyway, so no, wait a minute. Anyway, so this is something in 1948. If you didn't organise it properly, I'm sorry, we didn't have enough time.
Someone will stage
We have 50% of the world's wealth, but only 6.3% of its population. This is an American strategist in 1948. In this situation, our real job in the coming period is to maintain this position of disparity. To do so, we have to dispense with all sentimentality. We should cease thinking about human rights, the raising of living standards, and democratization. He's called George Kennan. He was a strategic planner for the US. And this is in-your-face admission. The world is getting smaller because it's finite. We're going to have more of it. There you are. There, that's what happened. Poverty and money for a few. That's what it's all about. Anyway, just to show how England colludes in this, something from the Independent. War is never pleasant, declared the Liberal Independent on Sunday during the Gulf War in 1991. There are certain actions that a civilized society can never contemplate. This carpet bombing is undeniably terrible, but that does not make it wrong. Now then, that means just killing people over areas. Nothing survives. And the cluster bombs that also go with it carry on, leaving bits of steel in people, and in kids' bodies. They die the most painful death. Actually, they prefer plastic because it doesn't show under the X-ray and nobody can help them. Anyway, and apparently, according to America, who will not stop doing cluster bombs, they think that it will jeopardize the lives of their military forces if that doesn't happen. If the human race had evolved properly, we wouldn't even have war. And culture comes into it there, but I'm not going to talk about culture because I don't have time. But I'm going to just tell you that America have, like the English tried to do before them, but far more successfully probably, killed everything good in the world because it isn't the capitalist model, and anything that wasn't the capitalist model had to be killed. Did you know that, I'm finishing, did you know in Afghanistan, in the 60s, 70s, whenever that was, before the Americans came in and funded the Mujahideen to stop all this, that women in Afghanistan, 70% of teachers were women, 50% of doctors, I'm just doing these things off the top of my head, they were really, they could wear what they wanted, they went to cafes, they went dancing, and then, so don't forget the double think. I think that's it, really.
Thank you. That's it, I'd like to say thank you so much to all our panellists. We've completely run out of time for any questions. I'm terribly sorry, but as to whether or not we answered the question, I'm not entirely sure, but I certainly leave you with different thoughts about the subject for today. So thanks very much.
I would say one thing. If people only bought beautiful things, that's not consumption. It's climate revolution. The world would be completely different if people didn't buy rubbish and eat rubbish.
They've told me to stop. Thank you. Thank you very much.